Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So I just watched Tron Ares. Ooh, let's talk about it. So Tron Ares is directed by Joachim Roning, much to many people's disappointment, because actually the previous film in the Tron franchise was directed by Joseph Kosinski, who wasn't a big deal at the time, but since then has become hugely popular and sought after, coming hot off of his last two films, Top Gun Maverick and the Formula One movie from earlier this year. And so lots of people were crying, screaming out saying, why Disney? Imagine if they had given the third Tron movie to Joseph Kosinski, considering the filmmaker he has become since his previous work in the Tron franchise. He's only gotten better, and mind you, Tron Legacy has always been a hit in this household. I grew up watching Tron Legacy on Disney Channel / Disney Cinemagic, which was a channel on Sky back in the day, and I used to love it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it was my favorite film of all time, like many people have been doing on the internet over the last week, but I will say I did always have a strong appreciation for Tron Legacy as a sort of out-of-the-box blockbuster movie that wasn't from the Marvel or DC or Transformers channels, but was still a really enjoyable time. And so I was looking forward to seeing more of Tron just in that capacity, and I was heartbroken, gutted, crying in the corner when I found out that the original script was supposed to follow Cillian Murphy's uncredited character in Tron Legacy, but they scrapped that a long time ago. Can you imagine? Can you imagine my reaction? But guys, even with all of that baggage and burden placed on Tron Ares, even though we're not getting the return of Joseph Kosinski, even though we didn't get Cillian Murphy back in the franchise as intended, I am going to proudly, with chest, hold my hands up and say, I had a good time with this movie. Yes, I did. I really enjoyed Tron Ares. I don't know what to tell you. Listen, it happens once in a blue moon where I'll sit down here to report my findings on a movie or TV show, and I'll be going against the grain. You know, maybe everyone has panned the project and I'll be sitting here like, yeah, actually I had a great time, as was the case last year with Gladiator 2. Or maybe everyone loves a project and I'll be sitting here like, I don't really see what the gag is. I don't really see the vision that everyone else does. But in this case, when it comes to Tron Ares, I've seen all of the hate that was thrown in this film's way. I've seen people being disparaging towards the film for various reasons, which we'll touch on. But I did always have a sneaking suspicion that this could be one of those films that I just needed to check out for myself to make up my own mind. Because if we look back, to Tron Legacy, we'll also see that film had very low critic scores as well. And as I said, I grew up watching that film and I had a blast with it each and every time. So I had to see it for myself, and I'm glad that I did, because I really enjoyed Tron Ares. So in terms of the story, finally we actually get to the review. In terms of the story, it centers on a sophisticated program called Ares, who's portrayed by Jared Leto, and he is sent from the digital world into the real world, initiating humanity's first large-scale encounter with artificial intelligent beings. He is given a directive by his commander, Julian Dillinger, to retrieve the Permanence Code, a coveted collection of data that will allow digital programs to exist permanently in the real world beyond the 29-minute limit. Now, Julian Dillinger, who's portrayed by Evan Peters, has inherited his grandfather's company, and he is looking to use this technology in order to produce weapons of mass destruction and get himself a big fat check from the government for selling this equipment to the armed forces. But then on the flip side, you have another tech billionaire in Eve, portrayed by Greta Lee, and she is actually the founder of a gaming company and is more in line with the Flynn. Oh, the Flynn side of things, she's trying to continue on his legacy, but she's not in it for all of the money and the glory in the same way that Julian is. She just wants to honor her sister's legacy, because her sister came close to finding the permanence code. And so the race to the permanence code ensues, and as these two tech billionaires try to figure out where it is, what it is, and how they can best use it, in the middle you have Ares, who's the master command program in charge of all of the other programs behind him to carry out Julian Dillinger's mission. But along the way, he finds himself learning more about humanity and the difference in the humanity that he sees in Julian, who sees him as disposable, versus what he sees elsewhere, like for instance with Greta Lee's Eve, who has a lot of heart and empathy in comparison, therefore awakening some thoughts and feelings that he's never had before as a program. So yes, that is the story of Tron Ares. Now, before we get into the good parts of why I really enjoyed this film, I'll get some of the negatives out of the way, because a lot of people's comments and critiques of the film still ring true to me. It's just that I don't care as much. Anyway, the first critique is the story is weak. And yes, I kind of agree with that. I think the story is pretty bog standard, very similar to what we have seen in many other projects, many other franchises. I mean, the topic of AI is hot and fresh once again. And actually, a part of me is excited about that, because it kind of reminds me of the late 90s to early 2000s trend of exploring technology and the sort of risks and rewards and dangers of technology. We haven't really seen that level of fascination with tech in a long time, and I think with this new age of AI, you know, people exploring how it can be used for good and for evil, mostly for evil, I think it's kind of enlightening and empowering a lot of creatives in Hollywood to produce more stories about this. And whilst I'm too young to remember what the craze was like in the late 90s to early 2000s, I feel like I can imagine that it was similar to this, in that you have these writers and filmmakers, you know, trying to see AI from all different perspectives, trying to imagine what can become of this technology and visualize it for the big or small screen. So that part is actually quite exciting to me. Although the downside of this being the second wave of the sort of tech craze in Hollywood is that a lot of these stories have been told before. Hence, you know, going back to my original point, a lot of this does feel kind of played out and familiar, because we've seen these themes and even archetypes in the characters many times before. But even taking into account the relatively weak and not entirely groundbreaking story, I have to say the writing here was still pretty decent. I mean, there was a little bit of unevenness sprinkled throughout, and I think most of that came from the forced comedic beats that are sprinkled throughout the film. One scene that really stands out to me is the elevator or lift, for those of us who are British, the lift scene, where you have Eve and Ares and Eve's friend Seth, I believe his name is, and Eve is kind of giving Seth a quick intro into Ares, and it's supposed to be like this kind of comical, Marvel-esque forced comedy scene that just doesn't work with the rest of the movie. And there are a few moments like that, especially with the character of Ares and trying to like humanize him, that don't quite fit with both the character and also the overall tone of the film. So that was the kind of unevenness in the story that struck out most to me. And then there was also some rockiness in the writing surrounding the transformation of Ares and his realization that he doesn't feel like a whole program. He has these malfunctions and dysfunction as he learns more about humanity and starts to feel things which he shouldn't be able to do. And so you have him kind of landing on a quote from Frankenstein which felt very on the nose. And of course, the on the nose reference to Pinocchio was thrown in there as well. You know, we've been there, we've done that. But honestly, other than that, other than those like nitpicks sprinkled throughout, I have to say the story was written pretty decently, and more importantly, it acted as the perfect vessel to the wider film, the wider scope, which was really why we came to tune into the next Tron movie, because this is a very well-made film. Yes, it is. This is a very well-made film. I have been saying for months, maybe even over a year now, that a lot of the blockbuster movies that are coming out of Hollywood these days just do not feel cinema going worthy. It was almost as if they lost the source after 2019, especially Marvel, which has been really rocky on this front. A lot of these films just aren't feeling like cinema. They don't have that sort of weight to it. Well, here comes Tron Ares to remind us that Hollywood, and in fact Disney, can still do it. They do in fact still have it, and they can still do it for less than $200 million somehow. So really there's some intense embezzlement going on in Marvel Studios. But anyway, we move. I know many of us were disappointed to learn that Joseph Kosinski would not be returning to direct the third Tron movie, but I have to say, somehow Joaquin Roning has done what Joseph Kosinski does best in taking a pretty standard, middle-of-the-road script and wrapping it around a cinematic experience that creates something, a project that is better than the sum of its parts. In my opinion, after having seen Joseph Kosinski's last two films, I don't think the writing in his version of Tron 3 would have been substantially better than what we got here. And so what we would really want from his version of the film is for it to look spectacular, feel spectacular, and sound spectacular, which is exactly what we've got with Joaquin. Guys, let's start off with, where do I start? Where do I begin? The visuals. The visuals were visualing. Yes, they were. Yes, they were. They were visually arresting. The special effects team were in their freaking bag. Everything looked incredible. Everything looked amazing. Like, I was just so pleased. I literally sat down in the perfect seat in the middle of the theater, ready to have a good old time on my birthday. On my birthday. This was my birthday movie. And I had a blast. I was pleasantly surprised from the moment that the film started to see how well produced it was visually. Now, of course, it helps that they leaned very heavily on the black and red aesthetic, which always looks cool and always looks striking, but they did it to the max. Like, they did not pull their punches whatsoever. And some of the action sequences that we got here were truly awe-inspiring. I was sitting there like, wow, cinema is cinema, good blockbuster cinema is back. This is what I want to see. This is what I want to see. Even in the films that we have gotten earlier this year that were better films overall, didn't have such visually arresting action sequences as this, in my opinion. Like, even if you throw in a Superman, even if you throw in a Fantastic Four, better films overall, hands down, but the action sequences didn't quite get me the way that the ones in Tron Ares did. So that's number one. The visuals were visualing. It was stunning. And there was even an ode, an homage to the original 1980s Tron thrown in there. And it shouldn't have worked. It shouldn't have worked. It should have looked ridiculous, and it kind of did look ridiculous. But it was also so well done that it was still believable within the context of the world. The visual effects team must have been Tron fans, because they really poured their heart and souls into this. I loved it. I loved the way that this film looked so much. And speaking of visuals, I've always been a big believer in color schemes. I mean, just have a quick scroll through my channel and you'll see what I'm talking about. But I really like the fact that there is a distinct color scheme for Tron Ares, the black and red, which can kind of contrast against the Tron Legacy one, which is mainly kind of whitish. It has like white with pops of yellow, but it's much brighter. And when we're dealing with that story, and then hopefully we'll get a fourth Tron movie sometime this next few decades, and maybe they'll go for like a green or like, I don't know, an orange. Like, I don't know. They'll change up the color story. But I like the fact that each film has a distinct color story. But then closely followed by the visuals, we have the second or maybe tied first best thing about this movie. And that is the soundtrack. The soundtrack to Tron Ares has me hooked. It literally has its claws in my brain, in my ears. It's literally all that I've been listening to for the last 3 days. It's literally all I have been hearing over the last few days. I am addicted to that soundtrack. I am. I hear it when I walk, when I shower, when I talk, when I eat, like when I sleep. I don't, it's not enough to hear the soundtrack through headphones. I need it injected. I need the particle vibrations to be injected into my veins. I'm so serious. This soundtrack by 9 Inch Nails, they did the thing. And that's another one, because people were disappointed that Daft Punk wouldn't be coming back after they did the soundtrack for Tron Legacy. And I was also heartbroken to hear that. I was like, what? You lost Daft Punk? Everyone shut it down. Everyone shut it down. But honestly, guys, 9 Inch Nails said, hold up, hold your horses. Don't leave quite yet. Don't leave quite yet. Put your faith in us. And they delivered. The music here was just insane. The vibes, guys. This film has vibes. This film has, I hate to say it, aura, to levels that many other films do not have. Scarcely do we see this level of aura in cinemas anymore. I had a blast. I'm so sorry to the haters. Maybe you guys didn't want to hear me say this, but I had the time of my life listening to the Tron Ares soundtrack, seeing the visuals and experiencing this movie on the big screen. In fact, so much so that I'm going to experience it in an even bigger screen on IMAX 3D, because I really do think it is worthy of that experience. Now, whilst we've already touched on the departure of Joseph Kosinski and Daft Punk being a reason why a lot of people did not want to check this film out, another reason for the controversy surrounding this film and why it's gotten so much hate off the bat is because of the central lead, Jared Leto. And this is where I'm not even going to hold you. This is where, listen, I completely understand if you want to boycott this movie because you do not F with Jared Leto, 100% go for it. That is entirely your prerogative. Because after hearing about some of these rumors and allegations against him, I'm like, oh, why did we have to do that, Disney? Why did we have to do that? What are we doing here? And it's the most bizarre thing ever, because it literally did not have to be him. And he's proven time and time again why it shouldn't be him. He doesn't have a great reputation in terms of, well, personal, clearly, but also box office. I mean, hello, Morbius was a huge gargantuan flop. Like, why would you saddle the Tron franchise with this man? Now, it's my understanding that Tron Ares was pretty much his idea and he kind of helped put it together. And so it makes sense that he would want to drive that vehicle, which, you know, it sucks. But how much would it have cost to like get him to go away? I'm sure Disney has the money in its couch cushions to just, I like the idea, but maybe we just do it with someone else. I mean, people have pointed out that Cameron Monaghan, who's famous for his work in the Star Wars games and who was literally right next to Jared Leto for all of 5 seconds in the film, would have been a great replacement for him. And you see some behind scenes footage of him doing incredible stunt work. I don't know if he would have been the perfect lead for this specific cast, because I don't really see him with Greta Lee. But I do think, you know, if we were to change everything, that he could be a good potential lead, or really just like anyone else on the planet. Anyone else on the planet who's not a piece of shit. How about that? How about that, Hollywood? Hollywood loves to act like there's like no one else on the planet who can do these jobs other than these pieces of shit. They love to act like that, really. Even though Jared Leto has a terrible track record, both in terms of personally and also in terms of box office. And sure, he has the Oscar, but he didn't need the Oscar for this role. So like, Hollywood, it's just so ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd. And it has cost them. It has cost them a fortune, because a bunch of people are boycotting this movie and slamming it and disparaging it purely based off of Jared Leto's involvement. So, well done. You really shot yourselves in the foot. Whatever it would have cost for Disney to just get rid of him, they could have recouped in the box office sales had he not been involved. But here we are. But I will say, and I will only say this once, in terms of his performance in the film, Like, he was good. Like, he was decent, but again, it didn't have to be him. It fully did not need to be him. Now, in terms of the rest of the cast, I really enjoyed everyone's performances here. I didn't get the feeling that people were phoning it in, or if they were making it look pretty decent. But you have Greta Lee turning in a pretty good performance as this tech billionaire with a heart and a deceased sister, and she brings a lot of life and pathos and emotion to an otherwise pretty cookie cutter character that she's saddled with. So I think she was the right move, you know, to be the co-lead in this film, and she's able to deliver in some of the action sequences as well. I mean, she's not actually experienced in combat, but the crazy situations that she finds herself in means that she has to step up real quick, and I think she delivers on that front really well. So big fan of Greta Lee in this movie. Even bigger fan of my sister, Jodie Turner-Smith. Jodie Turner-Smith as Athena, she wasn't messing around. She wasn't messing around. Everyone else might have been, but she wasn't. She was dead ass serious the entire time. Jodie Turner-Smith was excellent. The physique was excellent because she's really tall, so she looked like a woman called Athena. Like, the name fit her spectacularly. The look was brilliant. She had the blonde hair. Now, they love to do this, Hollywood. They love to do this in sci-fi projects in particular, where they have a dark-skinned character with like blonde hair, or some kind of anatomy has been changed to make them look more exotic and alien. Don't think I haven't noticed, Hollywood. But in this case, it actually worked out well for her because she looked really cool and striking. It does look really cool. It's just that it's, you know, a common stereotype that I've seen a lot of, Storm. And so, yeah, it's just something to point out that they're doing this, and we're aware. You don't have to change a black character's anatomy and physique in order for them to be cool. I'm just putting that out there. But Jodie Turner-Smith did look phenomenal, and her performance was even more so. And she ended up being much more of an antagonistic character than I expected at first, and she absolutely delivered on the grit and determination of carrying out this directive by any means necessary. And similar compliments go to Evan Peters as well, who is the evil tech billionaire, who kind of is a mix of a stereotypical, you know, billionaire CEO saying all kinds of crap to his shareholders, selling them a lie, a dream really, without telling them that this technology can only last for 29 minutes and hurrying them out of the building before they realize themselves. But then on the flip side, you have his mum, Gillian Anderson, kind of whispering in his ear like, you're a flop, you're lying to everyone, this is not how you should be running the company, I did a much better job in my tenure, but alas, you're now the king and we all have to follow you into this ditch. And then finally you have the really sad passing of his mother, where he has to show some emotion and some regret, and so that kind of adds another layer to the character before he takes the coward's way out and goes into the digital realm. So that was a cool story for him, and I think Evan Peters did a pretty good job in kind of playing around with that spectrum. Again, it's nothing very revolutionary. We've seen this kind of character a million times at this point, and considering the socio-political landscape that we live in, we're probably going to keep seeing characters like this pop up, but I do think he did a really good job with the material that he was given. I will say though, another standout issue or critique with the story here is that Julian was willing to literally completely destroy his company's reputation by sending out an army of black and red programs to try and kidnap Eve just in broad daylight. Well, it was actually at night, it wasn't broad daylight, but still the fact that it was like branded programs like clearly belonging to him, going after this innocent woman, chasing her through the streets of wherever the hell they are, you would think that that would be a poor marketing move, a poor reputational move for the the Dillinger Company. Maybe his shareholders would have issue with that. And considering the fact that the film starts with him trying to beg and plead with the shareholders for investment in his program, you would think he would care about that sort of thing and not reveal to the world that he is in fact leading an evil corporation. Overall, I am just as surprised as maybe you might be that I ended up really enjoying this film despite its flaws, and there are quite a few. I just think it was a hell of a good time in the cinema, and I am looking forward to seeing it again on IMAX this time because it was just such a thrill. And not only that, but this film, and especially the mid-credits scene, has me excited for more Tron, and hopefully we'll get a convergence between the Ares storyline and the Sam Flynn storyline from Tron Legacy. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, although this film is kind of flopping at the box office, which is completely Disney's fault, because aside from the whole Jared Leto thing, they also advertised this film very poorly. They had very little faith in it, which is a shame. And then also, to be fair, Tron has never been a huge multi-billion-dollar franchise anyway, so there's that. But all that is to say that the box office doesn't look great, and so the likelihood of us getting another Tron this decade is very slim. Slim to none. But in the meantime, guys, I'm going to be giving Tron Ares a 7.5 out of 10. So that's it from me. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on Tron Ares, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of this movie, if you've seen it, down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.